Dr. Vakil, thank you so much for joining us. It's a pleasure to have you on Influencers. You were with Mahindra College for 18 years. You had a huge fan following. You have a Facebook fan page by your students there. So clearly you have a very nurturing and yet very focused approach to education.
Well, thank you for that compliment. Yeah, I think what we have to do in education today is to basically cater to individual children. What we are stuck with the system, which goes back to the colonial period, is a factory assembly line kind of system, which was very useful at one time in producing the clerks that the British administration wanted. Now, children want, parents want their own individuality to be respected and catered to by the education system. So I think having a child-centered, student-centered education is, I think, first and foremost in what we need to do today and what I've tried to do at both the institutions I've been associated with.
But one thought is that with the kind of nurturing, with the kind of individuality that is sort of expressed here, how does a child learn discipline?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. I think fostering individuality is not at odds with discipline. My basic feeling is that happy children are motivated, they want to be in class, and therefore the teacher has fewer problems. When you're trying to shove things down their throat as they're passing by on the assembly line, that's when you have a real discipline problems. If you keep them engaged, happy, and you cater to their slightly different needs, I think discipline problems actually go away. A lot of children get turned off academics very early on because you've shoved things down their throat at a time they were really not interested in a lot of that material. So again, it's a question of catering to individual children and their interests and children are basically inquirers. And if you have an inquiry-based program, in the long run, I think it's useful. Yes, there'll always be 10% who will thrive in one system and not the other. But by and large, and that's either way, but by and large, I think most kids make the transition and actually love it.
I love the fact that Bombay International School was founded by a set of people just sitting around and talking about how unhappy they were with how oppressed their children are in school. And sort of that's how the school started. Until today, the ethos stays the same.
Yeah, I think parents who join BIS say that they are doing so because we keep that at the heart of the philosophy, while we've adapted in many other ways, like for instance taking up international curriculum. So we blend the old with the new in a nice way, and I think we are very happy to be who we are and yet move with the times.
Typically, how many years do you spend training an ICSE teacher to then move over to the IB system?
I think we invest more in professional development than I think any other school I know of, and it's an ongoing process, and there's a fair amount of supervision, observation, and teacher appraisal along the way that happens. So we do invest a lot of energy and time in making sure that teachers are adapting and delivering the programs as they're meant to be delivered. Because I think, it's possible to crack the code and to do IGCSE and IB in a very Indian board way and to do at least fairly well. But yes, broadly speaking, there is a bit of a talent crunch, and it takes a while for a good ICSE teacher to become a good IGCSE or IB teacher. But, I think good teachers are good teachers and they make the transition well, in the same way that, we take students from the ICSE system, from the 10th, from other schools, and they do well in the IB. They make the transition. So it's a question of knowing how to get teachers and students to make the transition.
You know, Bombay International the faculty tends to nurture its students. It's a very high happiness quotient, but doesn't really instill a sense of competitiveness. So how do these kids go out in the real world and sort of succeed?
Look, that's a good question. Now, my own position on this, my philosophical position is that most real life work is with people. You are here with two cameramen. You wouldn't be doing this on your own. I think there's a mentality which is encouraged by competitive exams, that essentially you are on your own with a pencil and a pen and a piece of paper, and you need to do it yourself in 2 hours. Real life work is teamwork. 1 + 1 + 2 becomes 4 or 5 or 10. And kids today are not learning that in traditional education systems, whether in India or elsewhere, because you are receiving material on your own, you're learning it on your own, you're regurgitating it on your own. Yeah? It's not exams that are bad, it's what you're testing through the exams. If it's excessive memory and recall based things, which typically Indian boards still suffer from, I would say actually they suffer from that more now than they did even 20 years ago. I mean, that's the sad reality. And that's what a lot of parents are voting with their feet and taking them into international curriculums.
So, you know, the placements out of BIS, the choices that students are making are quite inclined to the arts, to the graphic arts, and less towards the sciences in a way.
Actually, I mean, if you look at this year's our IB results, I mean, our physics, bio, chem and math higher level results have been better than our humanities and English results. So really, I mean, we equip students well, whatever their interests are. It's sometimes just the nature of the students and what they want to do, and we are agnostic in what they want to do. I'd also say that, you know, you can be very creative in science and math. Let's not assume that creativity only comes out in analyzing a poem or doing theater or art. In fact, I would argue that, you know, the most productive contributions to humankind have been, you know, by
As a combination of art and science.
Absolutely, in an interdisciplinary way. There are genuinely more options. Parents are open to their kids following their dreams and their passions, and I think they understand that, you know, if you're following your dreams and passions, you're likely to succeed. If you're just towing somebody's line, you know, it's then that you're not going to survive in the competition. So there is that aspect as well. I think all over the world now we are looking at people who are either creating their own areas of enterprise, if you like, or who are really skilled in solving problems for other people. You know, repetitive, you know, work, whether it's white collar or blue collar work, is really sort of being automated and taken over. So really you have to be creative, you have to learn.
But do you think that the days of sort of like a authoritarian approach are just over?
I wish they were over. I wish every school would see education as a partnership between parents, teachers and children. But I think most schools still have to get there. Look, you save a certain amount of time by keeping one constituent out, but you also lose a lot. There's an opportunity cost to that, and particularly if you have a student-centered approach, it does not make sense to keep parents out. Yeah, I mean, we are often solving problems together, or we are aspiring for excellence together. And of course, as you know, BIS has a long tradition of parental involvement. So, and I think the founders of BIS were really prescient in the model that they created. What surprises me is actually that there are not more parent cooperative schools.
get a little complicated? I mean, it's the same parents who have kids in the school as well, who are sort of coming often, who are sort of ideating often with faculty, and their children are here.
Yeah, well, I think I think so long as everybody understands that everybody's working for the same goal, which is the best education for their children, and I think 99% of parents understand that. They also understand that formal classroom education is best left to the professionals, and the parents help in an enormous way with all the auxiliary things, and they take a lot of burden off the teachers and the administration for that. So I think if it's well planned and everybody's vigilant and to make the system work in a synergistic way, I think it works. Yeah? It's you see, I think the problem is that in South Bombay in particular, the demand supply situation is such that schools can essentially get away with what they want, and if it's like, well, parents stay out of the door, they can get away with it. In most other parts of the world, they would not. But in most other parts of the world, the demand-supply situation is not as imbalanced as it is in South Bombay either. So, you know, so actually I would say that it's South Bombay schools that are the exception in the larger education world in keeping and wanting to keep parents out.
So BIS is quite well known for its inclusion, its system of inclusion, and also the RT kids as well as special need kids. How do you balance all that in a classroom?
Yeah, I mean, we choose parents, we don't choose the children, right? I mean, that's always been the philosophy of BIS. And given that, I mean, you'd have, since that's the ratio in the general population, you will have 20% of the kids coming in with special needs. What happens typically at other schools where you run entrance tests is that these students get weeded out, and you only land up with 2-5% of kids with special needs because the others just haven't made it through the entrance test. So I think that, I think inclusion is part of our child-centered approach to education. I think a good education is for everybody.
Thank you so much for joining us. It's been a pleasure.
It's been a pleasure here as well. Thank you.